Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. This is your host Zed speaking today on the evening. We call this the evening drive time. It's very good to engage with you. And I have in the studio today an absolute wonderful guest here by the name of Mr. Sir Peter Soulby, the City Mayor of Leicester. Welcome to the studio at Radio Ramadan.
Thank you very much indeed, and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. So Peter, by the time he leaves the studio, he'll be totally Zedified, and we're going to teach him a few more words today and get his battery charged, right? Inshallah. So of course, inshallah means God willing.
I know that,
right? God willing. So we're just brushing him up again.
Look, in my business, I often have to say inshallah.
Of course, Peter. 2011 May. Something happened in 2011 May.
I seem to recall 8 years ago.
Do you think people in Leicester remember that? What happened in 2011?
I don't know if they remember the date, but I don't think many people now sort of doubt that it was the right thing to do to have an elected mayor. And I know because I'd been a council leader before that, and when you're a council leader, you're anonymous. Nobody knows you. Being a mayor, they know they elected you. They know that you're answerable to them. They know if things go wrong, that you're the one to blame, and when things go right, as they sometimes do, that you're the person to praise and say thank you to. So it's a much more democratic and much more accountable system than we used to have.
Of course, Peter. Today, in 1 hour, we have 1,000 things to talk about, and we're not going to manage 1,000. So we're going to try our best.
Okay.
And we'll manage about 3 or 4.
Right.
And there's so much going on, after the 2011, your experience as when you were leader of the city council for a good number of years as well.
I was, and then I had the privilege to be a member of parliament for the Leicester South area, along with obviously Keith and Liz. And worked very closely with them. But looking back on it, I don't think I've ever once regretted actually giving up being an MP. I had to resign my seat and becoming mayor of this great city. It's a brilliant city. I mean, it really is. It's got a long 2,000 years of history, but it's got this unique thing that it is probably the most diverse city anywhere in Europe, certainly of our size, and that's brilliant.
Well, the stats will tell you that the diversity here is ever growing.
Yeah, it is. And as I say, it's something to be very proud of. Yeah. And interestingly, people in Leicester, from whatever community they come from now, are very proud to say they come from Leicester, and to recognise just what a great strength we've got in that diversity of our communities.
Of course, let's just remind all our listeners out there that 2011 May is the time when Sir Peter Soulby became the city mayor.
I was elected in the beginning of May. I'd actually resigned my parliamentary seat at April 1st, April Fool's Day. I'd have to resign my parliamentary seat so that I could stand as mayor. So there was a gap when I hoped that I would be elected, and did indeed then have the opportunity to and the need to say inshallah, because I wasn't certain it was going to happen, but it did, and I'm very grateful for the support that I've had ever since.
Of course, that period of time, it's now we're in 2019, and you then got your second term as a mayor also.
Yes, second term now, beginning my third term as mayor, and very pleased that actually I managed to get an increased majority or a decreased proportion of the votes, and obviously I must be doing something right. Not everything I know, because, of course, people will disagree with some of the things I do, and I wouldn't expect everybody to agree with everything I do, but that's part of the job of being mayor. You do have to make judgments. Sometimes, inevitably, you have to do things that people are not entirely happy with, but at least they know who to blame.
Of course, third term is almost a record, isn't it?
Well, it's a record for us because, of course, before 2011 we didn't have an directly elected mayor, and it's still the case that most cities and towns in the UK do not have directly elected mayors. Ourselves, Bristol, Liverpool, and a few other towns and cities have mayors, but most places still have council leaders. And of course, council leaders are just that. They're leaders of the council. And they're elected by the councillors in secret, in private, after the election, and nobody actually votes directly for them. The thing about the mayor is that people vote directly for the mayor, and I say they know who to blame.
Of course, there's always this balance between selection and election. Yes?
Yeah, indeed.
Always there is. And another wonderful guest has arrived here. He's free to join us.
Yes, Soulby comes in, my good friend and colleague, Kirk Master, who's one of the assistant mayors in the city, and has particular responsibility for neighbourhood services, and he's coming in now. He's coming in now so that he answers the difficult questions. All right, so that's the deal. All right.
That's right.
I told him he could come along, so long as if there were any difficult questions, I could pass them over to him.
Well, he's very shy today.
Oh, so, shy?
Welcome.
He is many things.
Yeah.
Shy is not one of them.
Welcome to the studio.
Nice.
I'll be on my best behavior. Yeah, I'll be on my best behavior. So our producer will set up his chair for him. You know, this is the love and respect they have for him here.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. Of course. Now we'll move on. Now we were talking about your third term now.
Yep.
Now, first of all, I will congratulate you here.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Right.
We shake hands across the table here.
102 FM live.
Yes.
So we congratulate you for
thank you very much indeed.
Your third success in being elected for a city mayor, and Kirk, and also you yourself, Kirk, as well.
Yeah, I think across the city we had an excellent campaign.
We did.
Peter had a 30-something thousand majority this time.
Like that, yes.
Big numbers.
61% of the vote on the first count, which is
That's right.
And we're officially now known across Labour circles as Red Leicester.
Well, this is what the question I'd like to ask both of you today is: do we have political parties in this city?
Yes, and apart from us, there are other political parties out there, and I think we've got to be aware that they do have different perspectives, and we've got to listen to them. But of course, although the overwhelming majority, 53 out of the 54 councillors who are elected,
That's where I'm
are
going.
Labour. Yes,
That's
I
where
know.
I'm going.
But when they're in the council chamber, they're not acting as party political figures. Nobody pulls their strings. Their job is to make sure that the city is governed well, and they take that very seriously indeed. And that does mean they ask me tough questions. That's their job, and it's also their job to represent the various different wards of the city, the various different parts of the city that they're elected for, and to speak up for the people who elected them. So you can be sure that, regardless of political party, they're very, very effective as local councillors.
Of course, there is a huge disparity, though, between in this election, 61, and then the next party, Conservatives, was at 17.2%.
Yeah.
And if you look at your last election, and the figures were marginal then as well.
Yes, I think we've increased our percentage vote, and they have lost some support, and I think that's just a reflection of the fact that in general, while as I was saying earlier on, people don't agree with everything that we do or everything that I do as mayor, but they do generally feel that the city is well governed by me as the Labour mayor, but by my councillors as Labour councillors, because frankly otherwise they wouldn't vote for us.
Of course, in the county was a little bit different there, much different.
Yes, I mean the county, politics out in the county are very different, but it's a different place, and and
almost like a different city.
Well,
almost.
The thing about the city and the county is that, and I've said this a lot of times, is that the boundary between us, while there is different politics out there, the boundary between us is quite artificial. It's not there's not even a line on the ground, and we do have to work very closely with them, and we do. And I mean, Kirk, of course, in his other capacity, works as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. And that is across both the city and the county, and indeed Rutland as well.
Too, yeah.
And I mean, he'll know that the police have to work across those boundaries, and to some extent so do we.
So you can see there's a comment there that you both are now part of the furniture in Leicester. Both
Yeah,
of you.
well.
That's how somebody has termed it, that you've had a long career here, right? And now I'm going to be asking you some questions, both of you. In our business, we cannot go forward without succession planning, right? Where are we going with succession planning for the next 4 years and thereafter?
Well, I mean, we've got a very challenging manifesto. I mean, we worked very closely with other Labour Party members in the city to produce a manifesto that, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging to deliver. It's ambitious for the city. We want to provide homes, we want to provide school places, we want to provide quality environment. And, we recognise that, the air quality in the city and the contribution we've got to make to fighting against climate change are all going to require a very considerable effort for us over the next 4 years, and we've got entirely focused really on making sure that we deliver that manifesto. And I mean, Kirk, I know, agree with me. We've already begun very quickly to draw up the plans to make that manifesto a reality. We're meeting again. What is it? Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah.
We're meeting again to look in detail at frankly, who takes forward which parts of the manifesto. So we've got a challenge ahead, but we're up for it.
Of course, huge challenges. We were talking this morning about the light bulb and the LED.
Yes.
But now we need to be literally at the speed of laser as even replacing LED, because these are the challenges that lie ahead when we're doing. I see all these roadworks on London Road, for example.
Yeah.
In your term as mayor, this is the third time London Road has been ripped apart.
It's
say,
not,
right?
I'm going to disagree with you a bit, because actually, London Road, although obviously they've done sewer works, they've done electricity works, they do stuff like that all the time, but what we're doing really is giving London Road a thorough makeover this time. We really are. And what we're doing there is making it safer for pedestrians, safer for cyclists, because tragically a cyclist was killed just outside the station just a couple of years ago now, and we're also trying to make sure that the traffic flows freely through the middle of it, safely segregated from the cyclists, and that is something that it's the biggest road we've done in Leicester. It is far bigger than any of the roadworks we've done in between, because this is a thorough redesign of the whole of the road. And it's a pain, because I live out on this side of the city, and I was complaining this morning about the fact that I was held up on the way in, and who do I blame? Well, I frankly blame the mayor, but but it is going to be worth suffering for.
He does shout at himself as well.
I do, absolutely.
Of course, now we have the Z generation now, period after 2000, and before that we are the millennium generation, the M generation, the Z generation, but we all here for the last 50 years part of the fossil fuel generation, right?
That's true.
What lies ahead of us is driverless cars, and it's not one road in any city which is even ready for that, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a question of getting driverless cars ready for any road.
So what the point here, what I'm making, is that are we thinking far enough ahead with AI going to take out 40% of the jobs? Are we ready for that? Are we even contemplating that as to where we go with that?
Very frank, I think it is very hard to say, because if you look back over just the last 10 years, never mind the last 20, 30, 40 years, the pace of change has been very, very dramatic indeed, and anticipating and designing that change and planning for that change is something that we've all just got to be very flexible about, and that means being very flexible about how we design for the future of the city.
And we have our smart cities agenda,
We do.
which is trying to get upstream of some of the things you're talking about, but it changes so fast. It's a difficult task.
You are in charge of the highways, aren't you?
No, it's neighbourhoods and communities based, isn't it?
No.
Local bits.
Oh, this is
Local bits here, yes, in the Spinney Hill area,
no.
very much so.
Throughout all of you listeners out there, if you can work out a way to fix this problem of moving around the city centres, because all these roads were designed 100 years ago.
Or more.
More, if not more, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the centre of the city,
Yeah.
The pattern of the streets right in the city centre are what 2,000 years.
Of course, we went from the cobblestone, the Roman cobblestone, and we came to the present tarmac, right? And now, where we are going in the future, we are encouraging people to use bicycles. We need more cycle lanes, and our mobility and our movements are drastically changing. The total mindset. So what we're saying is that how prepared is all the team at the city council on these matters?
We have a good team. We have a good highways team. We have a good transport team. We have a good regeneration team, and they're all doing different bits of what you're talking about and trying to future-proof the city. And London Road Scheme's a good example of that. But there's other areas of the city as well that are being looked at, and the neighbourhoods, which are important. One of the biggest problems is there's more and more cars, and as you said, the network just wasn't designed for it. So you have to look at other alternative means of transport, and cycling is one of those. Better buses. Buses are not in control of the local authority, which is something that we want to put back in. If we was in power, so there's a whole range of things that need doing, and we're looking at them.
We need lots of cycle lanes. Are we in agreement of that in this studio? Right?
We need more cycle lanes.
We need a lot more. We need a lot more. So we need to encourage people to get on that bike.
Yeah, but what I would stress though is, people are often saying, well, you're taking road space out to make cycle lanes. No, what we're not actually trying to do is get rebalancing in the use of the road. I recognise that as some drive a car myself. I've got a bike, but often I have to use the car, and you can't fail to recognise that at least for the foreseeable future, who knows how long, people will want to use private cars and need to have roads that will be able to cope with those private cars. So it's a balance. Rather than just putting in cycle lanes or more pedestrian facilities, regardless, it's a question of getting a balance.
So of course the next 4 years are going to be extremely challenging because things are changing at a rapid pace. Right, at a rapid pace. That if we used to say that it's a survival of the fittest, but it's no longer like that, Peter. It is those who are going to adapt to change that's going to make the difference.
I think that's true. On the other hand, I'm got quite a few years behind me, I do know that as people get older...
Me too.
Yes, I know, but as people get older, their willingness or ability to adapt to change is not the same as, a young teenager, who sees change very differently. And I think we've got to recognise that you mustn't leave people behind. You mustn't just say, well, it's change or die, because it's not. You've got to accommodate the fact that when you're introducing new technology, some people will find that threatening and challenging. So it is getting the balance.
Of course, my biggest worry in the city and all over England is that with the advent of AI increasing every day, right, and so many jobs are going to be lost. How are we going to cater for those people? Because joblessness causes a huge social upheaval across the board in the community.
I think, with every introduction of new waves of technology, there is always disruption in the way in which people are employed. But what I think experience shows happens is that new types of jobs come along. And, who would have anticipated people were, 50 years ago, who would have anticipated people would be needed to program computers or to make microchips or whatever it might be, that change is going to happen. I think the challenge for us, the council and people we work with, is actually making sure that people get the opportunity to be retrained into, to have the new skills.
This is where we
have new
need
technology.
I used to tell people, inside this head is a Pentium. And now they laugh at me if I say that, because it's no longer valid anymore. Now the processes are much faster than I can keep up with them, right? So, if you don't keep up, you don't adapt to change, then we got issues here, and that goes across the board in everything that we do.
Yes.
Whether it's at our work or how we are towards each other and our conduct. The population in this city under 30s is huge. You know the numbers, Kirk?
I don't know the exact number, but it's a big population.
It's certainly quite a young city.
It's a young
It's
city.
a young city, and that's partly because, of course, we have a lot of students here. But it's not
Yeah.
just that. It's because actually there are lots of younger families here, and that's a challenge for us because we've got to provide school places for them. But it is quite a young city.
Well, in the next session, we're going to talk about that because you've spent £27 million on schools here in the city.
That's only the recent bill.
Yeah.
We've actually spent several hundred million pounds, and I'm very proud of the fact that we've renewed every secondary school in the city.
In the
You
city,
just look around the city, and now. Of course,
Okay, we're going to get back
Okay, we'll
after
come
the
back
second
with that.
session.
Okay.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Brothers and sisters, this is the Z Drive Time show this evening. We are here joined together with Sir Peter Soulby, our city mayor, and Kirk Masters. He's also an active member. He's
an assistant mayor. Assistant mayor with responsibility for neighbourhoods,
of course,
and a very good help, support and advisor to me.
So you're listening to us on Ramadan special EAVA 102.5 FM, so do call in on 0116-212-9324, or you can even text us on 07450-925-084. So we're going to move on forward now with some many topics that we had, but obviously we don't have all day and tomorrow either, so we're going to keep it sort of short, sharp. Now, in the city, Peter, active, homeless, street sleepers we have litter problems, we have a whole list of issues that we are going to briefly talk about without shouting at each other. Being kind and loving. It's a month of Ramadan, Peter. We need to exercise a lot of gratitude. So we have about, I think, approximately 50 rough sleepers on the streets,
No.
or 36.
Well,
what is the figure?
It depends. It varies from barely a dozen through to over 50. There can be different numbers out at different times, but I think we've got to recognise that we as a council spend over £3 million a year on dealing with homelessness. And the people that we see out on the street are only a small proportion of the people that we deal with. Because for most people, we manage to avoid them becoming homeless, or if they do become homeless, do end out on the street, we get them off the streets very quickly. It is also, I think, important to say, and I'm not at all unsympathetic to people out on the street. Of course, I'm not. A lot of them have desperate problems, but I think we have to recognise that for many of them, having a roof over their heads is not the main problem, and we can offer them a roof over their heads, and many of them, for lots of reasons, are not prepared to accept that offer. Many of them have very complex problems. Drug, alcohol issues that are very, very distressing, but very, very difficult to deal with. I say we spend over £3 million a year. We've got a team that goes out there and works with them. We know almost every single one of them by name. We know their backstories. We know what their issues are. We do try very hard to help and have a lot of assistance in helping them from some very generous people in the communities across the city. And you'll know yourself that a lot of communities work together.
Of course, yeah.
And you've been very actively involved in that yourself. You will know how communities work together, but you will also know that many of the problems that we're dealing with are not just ones about putting a roof over somebody's head. They're more complicated than that.
Of course, if you took £3 million and you divided that by the number that Peter's talking about, the figure comes to about £100,000 and £110,000 per person, which is a lot of money. Now,
it would if those were the only people we were helping, but those are the people we see on the street. In fact, most homelessness is hidden homelessness. It's people who don't have a secure place of their own, or find themselves temporarily thrown out by a landlord or something of this sort. And of course you don't see them. The people you see are those who have what we describe as a street lifestyle, that they're out there on the street. And of course it's also important, I think, to say that we see quite a lot of people begging on the street, but they're not, for the most part, the same people who are rough sleeping. Many of the people you see out there begging actually do have a secure place to go back to at night. And quite a number of them have tenancies or somewhere else to go to, including in some cases council tenancies. So it's not the same thing. The people that you see on the street begging and the people who are rough sleeping, and or the scale of homelessness, which you don't see.
And that's what Jedzi was talking about, who runs the homelessness project here on Saturday night. They know as well which people are genuinely homeless and they do need the support, and we try and give them the support, and so do they in all of those charities and community projects. But they also recognise there's a huge number that come into the city from different parts and beg because they choose to do that.
So having been involved in this particular sector myself, I just cannot see that there's maybe up to 10 organizations in Leicester
There are, yes.
who are very active, doing what they can respectively, and even working together with each other, signposting to each other. And I don't see that this is a long-term solution. We are just sort of doing temporary fix, but we don't have prevention. We are more reactive than we are preventive.
I think that's true, and this is no reason for us to say, oh, it's all right in Leicester, but it is the case that we're seeing similar issues in all of major UK cities. And although there are some major initiatives taking place in them, there isn't one single city in the UK that can say that it doesn't have, it's cracked the problem, it's got everybody off the streets and into a decent home. They haven't. But having said that, I know that we must do more. We must continue to change the way we do it, and to do more, and to work with others such as yourself, and and others who are very, very committed, and continue to work with those partners, because although it's not something that is easily solved, it's not something we should give up on.
It is a huge cost. This cost is coming from somewhere, and then when this money is spent in this area, then other areas are suffering, and they're having their funding pulled out of them, and they're doing a fantastic job, like the Wesley Hall, for example.
Yeah,
Peter,
I know.
you yourself, you were an MP, are very, very familiar with Wesley Hall.
I am, yes,
right?
yes.
And there are 200 Wesley homes in the city of Leicester,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they, look how they all have to operate on shoestring budgets.
They do, yes.
And they can't attract the hierarchy of the society in Leicester to come and work with them, because these are not what you call sort of fashionable to work with. They'd sooner go and work in a big organisation where there's a lot of cred, where there's a lot of climbing up the social ladder. And Wesley Hall is a classic example.
I agree with you, and I mean, I've known Wesley Hall. There's a project for, ever since I was first elected as a councillor in the Spinney Hill ward,
Of course.
back in the 1970s, would you believe? So I've known about the work they do. But I think it's worth saying, and while we continue to put money aside for something like or for the issue of dealing with homelessness, it is at a time when the government has taken away vast sums of money that we have in the past had for our running costs. We've lost £150 million a year towards the council's running costs, and that money used to come to areas like Leicester because of what's called deprivation, just exactly the sort of issues we're talking about. They have completely cut that £150 million, and areas of deprivation like Leicester and similar cities up and down the land have suffered this massive cut, while other parts of the country, comparatively well off, with much fewer problems, with less deprivation, continue to get the funding that they used to get, and that's just scandalous.
So this issue of homelessness is much to do with emotions. People are emotionally charged. They'll go to the market. Different communities are coming there with food, and they feed people. But it's not a fix. This is not going to be a long-term fix. The issue about the beggars you mentioned. This has to be dealt with the police. The police have to get involved, and that's going to cost money. And the police funding is gone.
I agree. And they too have suffered, because we do work very closely with the police. And actually, the police in the city centre have been good to work with.
And the group that you set up, the Street Lifestyles Operational Group, has the police on it.
Has the police involved. And Kirk, as I say, as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, will, I'm sure, bear me out, because we don't always hesitate to criticise the police when they get things wrong. I think we should give them praise when they do things well. And their commitment to dealing with the issues of the city centre is brilliant. It really is. But between us, we know there's still a job to be done.
So the work that you have done over the city centre, you mentioned just now, is tremendous. Some of the work that your team have achieved in the city centre, with the cathedral, with the Jubilee Square, with the Richard III, right? They're all in this. The pension is working good today, right? It's a whole long list. of good things that have happened. So we're here to take the good with the bad, Peter.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Right.
I mean, but as I say, I'm very happy to get the praise for that. But actually, those are the bits people notice. In fact, most of our expenditure and investment takes place across the city, in the neighbourhoods and communities across the city. I'd come back to that example earlier on with the schools. Several £100 million spent just on our secondary schools. Well, people don't actually notice that so much because it's not in the city centre, but it's real and it's big.
Now, you only have to come around the corner from the High Cross and you see in corners where people are doing substance abuse, and you can't even tell them anything because they are busy shooting a needle up their arm, right, Peter? And you have to stand there watching. And this is how it is, this reality. So we live in a beautiful city, we spent a lot of money, we've made it look good, and then in these corners, every trouble spot should be dealt with by the respective people to say that, look, this is the area where they congregate, let's sit here, do some counselling to them, let's talk to them. If we leave them to their own devices, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kirk may be better to talk about this than me, but because obviously, he works as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, but I know it is the case that the police do their very, very best.
From a city centre perspective, the group that now operates, the Street Lifestyles Operation Group, has all the relevant council offices on, so waste, cleansing, the city centre team, police, etc. Peter mentioned, we know all of these people by name, the ones that are begging and homeless, some genuinely, some not, and a lot not. And we try and work with them, and we try and improve their circumstances, and etc. etc. The ones that are committing offences, that's a police matter. And the police as well, they've had huge cutbacks. They've lost over 500 officers, £40 million out of their budget.
And that's another problem.
It's another problem. You can't, and it's not, you can't always blame that because it's happened. We just have to deal with it, and we've got to get on with it. But the job that they're doing around some of those issues is quite effective, and we can only do it in partnership. It doesn't work in isolation. I think that's why the new working models that we have with partners like police and local authorities is a big change.
I tell you what's interesting, I was saying earlier on, we've got only, in a sense, our share of the problems, and many other cities have the same, but a lot of other towns and cities do come to look at the way in which we work together in Leicester, across the agencies, in the Street Lifestyles Group and and beyond it. And I think, we're held up by many of them as a model of how you can work together across the traditional boundaries between different types of services.
We've got to share resource.
Well, Peter, in this studio, together everyone achieves more success. That one?
Yes,
that one? Teams together, everyone achieves more success. Now, you come off at Junction 21, you drive along Narber Road, you come to the Holiday Inn, it's iconic, yes?
Well, I've heard it called other things, actually, but
you turn left and you see Leicester.
Yes.
You're in the gateway now
yes, you are.
of the city of Leicester. You see the High Cross, right? Then you see these wonderful buildings. Every month I look at them and say, wow, this looks good. Yes?
We are getting a lot of new investment.
And there is some wonderful buildings coming along that road, isn't there, Kirk?
Yes, there are buildings.
Yeah. And this is what makes everybody happy to say, wow, this is what it's all about.
I tell you what, we're talking earlier on about being mayor. One of the things that is different as mayor is that you can actually sell the city. I don't mean literally sell it, but you can actually promote it as a place where it is worth investing in a way that I never could as council leader. And I think, the fact that we've brought all that investment along the Ring Road, you just look around there and you see it. The fact that we brought IBM to Leicester. Hastings Direct have brought a lot of jobs to Leicester. A lot of big jobs, and those are down to the fact that as mayor, you can actually talk directly to them,
of course,
and say, what would it take to bring you to Leicester? Bringing IBM to Leicester is something that happens because you got a mayor.
Of course, that's a wonderful thing that if we build a city, we make it attractive, then we will attract investment. The LEP are doing a fantastic job. Trying to bring in investment, and you're on that board as well, Peter.
I am, yep.
Right? Now, I'm like today, not worried about the big boys here in the city. They're doing well. It's all the small organizations here. When I have to talk to them every day in the mornings and they tell me their grievances, I feel really sad about that, Kirk. Wesley Hall, for example, and there's many like that. There are small organizations all over. They're looking out for a little bit of money to fix the toilets, to fix this, fix that, and it's never going to be any different, Peter. So the whole model of all the community centers that are responsible for community development, without them, we ain't going to function.
I agree.
I think one of the beauties of Leicester as well as a city is the diversity, not just in its population, but the community organisations that exist, and what they actually bring to communities is fantastic. You can't replicate it. You can put a bill alongside it, you can put money alongside it, that's a different conversation. But the general giving and generosity in this city is second to none. You can go anywhere in the country and you won't be able to replicate it. What we try and do through my portfolio as in neighbourhood services, we try and support organisations that have been used to delivering services for a long time in a particular way. To what you were talking about earlier, things are changing. Times are changing, communities are changing, people are changing, the way we do things is changing. So we're supporting them with those things.
I need to talk louder so people start listening, Peter. We need to make a difference. Otherwise, we are being a mess.
I can tell you a story. A lot of years ago, some of your listeners might remember this, the late Terry Wogan described Leicester as the forgotten city, the lost city. That's right. It's the lost city of Leicester. And he used to say it on his radio programs. It was a city that was often mentioned in the traffic bulletins, but he never knew anybody who'd been there and come back. Right? And he thought it was very funny. And in Leicester people, it hurt a lot. Not because they thought they were lying, it wasn't true, but because they thought actually we were a bit of a lost city. I'll tell you what, they don't say that anymore. The late Terry Wogan don't make the joke anymore for obvious reasons. But in fact, I don't think anybody would dream of making that joke anymore, because we are talking loudly. We are talking proudly about our city.
And we're on the map.
Yeah, we're on the map.
We're on the map.
Football, we'll come to that.
Oh, well, that helps.
Right? Now, I'm going to tell you now about something very, very serious. There's a parking levy. The people in the city are not sleeping at night, right? Because there's an issue going on here with a parking levy. There's an issue going on, and they're dreaming at night saying, we got a situation here that we are going to rob Paul to pay Peter.
Well, you're not going to pay me. The parking levy is something that they've done in Nottingham. And when they introduced it, as well over 10 years ago, I think now, about 10 years ago, we said, it'll kill Nottingham. In fact, what it's enabled them to do is to discourage people from using cars. It doesn't stop them, it discourages them from using cars. But actually, what it does most importantly is it produces some revenue, some money that enables them to support public transport. And what it does, because they can support public transport, it means people have got an alternative to having to use their cars. And I'll tell you, loads of times I would quite happily, I live right opposite the bus stop, right? I would quite happily leave my car at home if I thought there was going to be a frequent bus, in the mid-evening when I was going to be coming home, I'd use it. So being able to subsidise the buses and get them running an affordable price is what you get from putting a levy on parking. You certainly don't kill the city as people said would happen in Nottingham. We're going to consult on it. We're not determined we're going to do it regardless of what people say. So there's going to be a lot of debate about it in the months to come. But I think in principle it's a good thing to do if it produces a better quality bus service for us.
I think a lot needs to be understood about that, because many are thinking that if the hospital, Royal Infirmary, have got 300 cars parked there, that after 10 cars they have to pay
one of the things
£5 a week.
One of the things we're going to be consulting about is who is exempt from it, who's left out of it, who is excused from having to pay it. And clearly one of the most obvious groups to look at when you think about who you leave out is the hospitals and health services, possibly also schools, probably. Why do you want to penalise teachers for teaching in the inner city? You don't. Actually, you want to encourage them to do it. So, there are going to be exceptions. There are going to be all sorts of debates about where you do it. But I'm just promising, absolutely, there's going to be a lot of consultation about it, and we will be listening to what people say.
Of course, a lot of people don't know it or realise it, that here moving on to another topic now, the schools we talked about earlier, that during school holidays, loads and loads of children, they don't have a meal to eat, and they have to go to the Christchurch and many other community
It's what they call
organizations.
holiday hunger.
Yeah, holiday hunger, right? And there is some funding available for that?
Yes, we've done a scheme. We wanted to do an even more ambitious scheme this year, but the government didn't include us as one of the areas to do it. And we've made a very powerful case that Leicester was a very good place to do it. It's not going to stop us doing it, but we want to do it even more because obviously we recognise that for many low-income families, actually, well, of course, I'm sure it's nice to see the kids at home. Having to have that extra bill of feeding them when there are no free school meals available to them is a major burden.
Indeed, there's a huge disparity here on poverty index here, right here in this city, and many other cities like Manchester and the big cities, and sometimes people are collecting aid to send it abroad in third world countries, but we have issues here as well.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely, which needs to be addressed. Is what about businesses located in the city?
I was just going to say. I'm well aware that the obligation to give to charity is an important part of Ramadan, and I'm very aware that people during the period, the month of Ramadan, give very generously to obviously to causes that are abroad, but also to causes here in the UK, that contribution is an important part of recognising that it isn't just us in the council and the official sector that gives. We are very, very dependent on the charity of individuals, and very grateful for it.
Of course, I think a lot more coordination is required by the main stakeholders from the business community and from the city council. A little bit of a samosa lunch is due, I think.
Right? Well, we have the business improvement, the bid now.
Business improvement district.
Business improvement district. So that's a network
which is businesses coming together, small and large.
That's right.
In the city centre, it's going to be very impressive.
And they dictate the agenda to that. They dictate what's important for them within the city centre boundaries. And
of course, a lot of closures as well of smaller businesses in the city centre, and is a cycle developing
but
over
far
years.
more openings.
Yeah.
People notice that Bruciani's closed.
Yes.
Right? But what they don't notice is that actually a far greater number of food, drink outlets, have come in their place. And in fact, we have got a lower level of retail, food, drink outlets and shopping outlets in the city centre than comparable cities, certainly than either Nottingham or Derby. We've actually got a very successful city centre with a lot of small independent traders very pleased to invest there.
Of course, I've got to now speak about some good things, like Granby Street has been an eye-opener over the years when everything was shut down there. It's now come alive.
It's coming up, isn't it? It takes time. It takes time, but it is coming up.
So all of you out there, listeners, time is just flown by, right? There's a lot of good things that have happened here in the city, which I went through earlier on. There's a lot of development going on, so we must all look at the bright and the positive side of development in our city, and we must all achieve this together as a team. And of course, Peter is part of that team, and Kirk is part of that team, yeah?
Well, yes.
Teams.
Because they are leading the team, right? So we must all do our best to support each other in every.
I agree with that absolutely. And can I just say, before we actually close how much I enjoy being on here, and particularly at a time when obviously it's in the middle of Ramadan. We're obviously aware of that, but also at a time when you're focusing on cohesion and diversity in the city.
Brilliant. Now we got to say goodbye to you all. Thank you for listening in today. Jazakallah khair.